All right, Luke, take us back 2.5 years ago. You showed up to D1, end of your sophomore season. Like, where was your headed at that point? Like, what were your goals? What were you looking for at D1?
Well, obviously, my main goal was to play collegiate football. My parents brought up to me that this place, they knew it through people, and eventually got to you, and figured out this would be the best place to take my workouts to the next level and be the best athlete possible.
So at that point, like I said, you said your goal was to play collegiate football. Up until that point, you weren't being recruited. Had played a little bit your sophomore year, but not a ton. What gave you the confidence to think like, man, I'm a college football player?
You know, just it started with me believing in myself. I've always wanted to do this, and I'm always been a stubborn person, so I've used that to my advantage to not put any doubt in myself, and just believe in myself basically, and knowing if I work my butt off every day in here, it could be possible.
So coming into D1, said you showed up right after your season was over, knowing that you're needing to get bigger, you're needing to get stronger, you need to get faster. What were in your mind, like, what was hey, I'm coming into D1 and like this is what I'm going to accomplish. This is what I need to get that I'm not maybe getting at my local high school.
I came into it open-minded, but once things got rolling, I got the ball rolling. Definitely my speed work, and it's been nothing short of amazing.
Yeah. So yes, speed, as you know, and you're finding out, is the biggest separator for going into college athletes. That's what you'll see a great high school kid who may be huge, he may be look great on the field, but he lacks the speed, and so he's not going to be recruited. At what point would you say you kind of discovered that? Some kids, it takes them a while to understand how important speed is.
Kind of once I've got my foot into varsity football, and you kind of see all the teams you play, and you see them all online and huddle, and what guys are getting recruited, and obviously is a big standout, athleticism and speed.
Yeah. What role would you say the D1 coaches and culture played in your growth, both as an athlete, and then beyond that, like from growing into a young man that you are now today?
Honestly, like a second family. I'm in here 4 times a week. Try to be in here as much as possible during the season as well, but they're super supportive. Kenan, work with Kenan, Coach Mika, and Coach Coop, and whenever someone can help me out, they were always there, ready to train me.
So would you say there was a moment or a time where you truly realized, like, man, I can do this. I can be a college football player. I know you always had the goal. You always like, hey, I think I can do this. I want to be a college football player. But was there a moment that you can recollect back to where it's like, man, I don't think I can do this. Like I know I can do this.
Probably when I started to get my first like Division I college interest. It kind of lit a spark in me, and that spark created a fire. And I was like, wow, like this is for real. Like I just keep grinding. I know I can achieve it.
Perfect. Steve, someone like yourself, Hall of Fame football player, obviously know the game, inside and out. What did you maybe see in Luke early on that others were missing, or you thought that others were missing?
Well, just really honestly watching him run around, West Nashville Sports League basketball courts and playing I could tell he was athletic. As a scout, you look for hip fluidity and ankle mobility and things like that. And I'm like, this kid can move, right? But knowing he was a year younger than everybody in his grade, it was just a matter of when was his body going to allow him to catch up, or when was his mind going to catch up with his body so that he can kind of put it all together. And I think, nothing against the high school, weight programs, but you got to, for his school, for example, you got 100 kids on the team, you got one strength coach, maybe a couple assistant coaches kind of work in there as assistant strength coach. But I think for him, the key was to get his body to grow and try to catch up with everybody else in his grade, even though his youth was playing a little bit against him. And I knew the pedigree of the trainers here and the one-on-one approach to it, and just having him buy in. And I think for a kid who's 16, 17, 18 years old, when you can physically see a transformation, when you can see, hey, I'm putting in this work, and how it'd be whether you guys time reps or time get-offs or time tens or a shuttle drill, like he can see the time chipping off. So I think it was a good it just kind of got the ball rolling. And then he said, hey, this is working. Like, I'm getting stronger. I'm getting faster. I can see it. And then that confidence carries over onto the field. So I think it was just a matter of getting it, getting him in here and getting it going prior to that junior season for him in high school.
And I think I think that the confidence coming from the sports and the training then spilled over into just him as a young man growing up. And I saw so much change and development and his confidence all the way around, the way he carried himself, walked through the door, spoke to his friends, spoke to his family. And so I think for me as the mom, not having anything necessarily to do with the sports, and Steve already had, played all those years and everything, it was just more of like, I could see him as a human being developing. And for me, that was huge. And I think that is a big component coming out of here too. He's surrounded by people that are believing in him. And when he puts the time in and the work, he's seeing that he can do hard things. And I think that will, go ahead and help him out for the rest of his life.
Steve, a lot of parents that were out there, if their kid, maybe he's struggling, maybe he's not getting on the field like they think that he should be. They may transfer, they may move him to another sport. They may move cities altogether. You guys, you stayed where you stayed put. You chose to really, kind of invest back into him. Finding D1. What kind of gave you the confidence to say, like, no, we're going to stay right where we're at, and we're gonna find a path to get Luke there. That's going outside of the school. We're going to do that, but we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the true test of an athlete. I mean, this covers any walk of life, but for an athlete, it's a big thing, is adversity. How do you handle adversity? And I think for him, going to a private school that has all the resources, and when he, wasn't getting the play time on the field, and it could have easily transferred to a different school. And I kind of didn't really ever bring that up. It was kind of like, we're going to see how bad you want it, right? And all the credit to him. Like, he made it a mission after his junior season to come in here, even more so than he did the year before. And he was like, they're not going to take me off the field. And I saw that. And for me, that's when it clicked for me that, okay, now I knew ability-wise he was going to continue to grow. And I know the athleticism and it was going to show up. But when he decided to take that adversity of not playing head on, that's when I knew he could do it at the next level. Because when he walks in the door at the next level, day one, you're starting back out at the bottom of the totem pole. And if you can do it once, you can do it again. And you're going to have to, get your mind right, get in there, realize nothing's going to be given to you, and you're going to have to earn it. And I think he showed that he can do that.
Landon, for you, you share your life with your community. Luke's obviously a large part of that. Why was it important for you to showcase Luke's journey, even though parts of it were glamorous per se, but parts of it really aren't, but you still chose to kind of showcase that whole journey for him?
I feel like my demographic that follows me are moms just like myself with kids going through this, or their dream is to play in the NFL one day. And sure, that might be Luke's dream as well, but I feel like, and I hope it is, but there's moms that would reach out to me just on that same journey. And what is Luke doing? And what is he eating? And what is he training? Where does he go? So I felt like a resource. I've always been someone that I felt like I would share my life and they could look to me for anything that can help. I'm an open book. And I thought it was important to share that it wasn't the path that everyone might have thought. Like, this was, he was a little bit of a late bloomer. He was young for his class. Like, every bit of this was just blood, sweat, and tears. And I think as a family, we had to kind of like dig in. And then I just watched him evolve. And I think I was just trying to highlight how important it is, like Steve said, to just stay there. If you want it that bad, you're going to go get it. And I had a lot of women, like I said, reach out and want to know, and had no idea about training like this or reclassing or what this journey looked like, because I think it is a highlight reel, a lot of what we share on here. And there was a lot of really hard times that went into that, a lot of very private moments between the three of us sitting at the kitchen table figuring out what the next step was going to be. But I believed in him, and just like these women believe in their own sons and daughters. But I just thought it was important to get the training in and dig in and support them. And, if he wanted to go to D1 and he really wanted it that bad, then we were going to pay for that so that he could get that training and get, as advanced in this football thing that he wanted to. But I thought it was just important to kind of take the curtain down a little bit and show that there's so many different ways to get to the same goal. Yeah. And I was just so proud of Luke, and I wanted to be able to, kind of highlight that and just share kind of our journey.
Once he figured out how to set an alarm clock.
That changed a lot of things right there.
Yeah. He did oversleep a couple times, which I shared that. No. But that's part of it.
We forget that.
Yeah,
you never oversleep again, right?
My son was just going to a football camp at CPA, and we get there, and I'm like, "Where are your shoes?"
Yeah.
He's like, "I don't have any shoes."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Do you want to use mine?" Like, "Yeah, I'll take your shoes." So yes.
Yeah, we forgot shoes. We forgot a lot of things.
That's definitely happened here before too.
What are we talking about?
And so, Lena, what was it like, over these last 2.5 years, as a mom watching Luke, transform his not just his body, but like I said, his confidence level to grow into a young man. And yes, everyone sees the football field and Friday Night Lights. We all love that, but well beyond that, what was it like, that kind of that growth process, watching him as a mom?
I think what I've realized here, even most recently, is that he has such a big heart. He's like a gentle giant. And so there was that, does he have that level of intensity? And I think what he's proved to all of us in this house is that you can have both. You can have heart and intensity, and you can step on the field and be nasty, right? But then you can be a gentleman on the, from the sidelines. And so I feel like he's encompassed all of that. And I'm just really proud of his confidence and how he's carried himself. I watch even just his stature and the way he walks through a door, like I said earlier. It's just all the way around. I'm so proud to be his mom, and I get the bragging rights of saying that's my kid. And he's really proved himself here, and it's just been really fun to watch. But so much of the confidence, I think, is what I see the most.
So how would you guys say that the atmosphere and the team at D1 gave you the peace of mind of knowing hey, he's in the right place? Yes, there's other places we can train, we know that, but just know that, hey, I think y'all were here for 2.5 years, you weren't going anywhere else. How did you know that, hey, he's in the right spot?
I mean, I think for me it was, back to he'd come back, his attitude, you could tell he bought in, and I purposely tried to stay out of this process as much as possible just so that he could find his way through it. Again, there's plenty of times I wanted to be the one to flip the switch on for him, but you can't do that. Yeah. For as much as I know what it's supposed to look like and smell like and feel like and taste like I can't flip that switch on for him. So I just knew based on when he would come home, he'd be like, "Man, that was a rough one today. I can't walk." But I know you only get to that point if you bought in that day, right? So there's plenty of ways to half-ass a workout and come up with excuses why you can. Maybe you're up late the night before, you had a hard leg workout 2 days before, and he's putting through it again, and you could say I can't. But he came back spent. You could tell he laid it all out there. And so to me, that's not as much of a testament as you're going to get out of me is yes, you just, the only way to get better is keep doing it, lining up and stacking days and doing it day after day after day. And, the results speak for themselves.
Coach Kenan here was his primary coach. He worked with Desmond Cooper. He worked with Mika, but really he's trained with Kenan for the bulk of that. Speak to a little bit what made you guys number one trust Kenan, right? You're entrusting your child with Kenan. What gave you kind of the peace of mind of knowing man, he's in the right hands?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to when I first reached out to D1. Having known the D1 family in not so much maybe this location, but who kind of pointed us in this direction to come to the West Nashville, and knowing Kenan's pedigree from where he how he was involved with the sport at at various levels all the way up the chain. He knows what it's supposed to look like. He knows what the demand is, not so much, not only from a high school program, but college and the pro level. I knew there wasn't a better spot for him to be in. And again, it goes back to the trust factor and not so much with me, but the trust I was getting from seeing the results and the way he was coming back, buying into a program. Like you only get the results if you buy in, and it doesn't matter how much I bought in, it's how much he bought in, and he was seeing it, and he was, you know, making progress every time he stepped in this weight room, and you know, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that you touched on earlier, Steve, was you know, Luke went to a great school, NBA, right down the road. They have amazing facilities, amazing weight room. You know, everything that you could really ask for. Right. But like you said, there's 100 kids in there, and there's 2, maybe 3 coaches. They're doing the best that they possibly can with the resources that they have. You know, here, like we're able to specialize, right? We're able to drill down just specifically to Luke and to what his development, his needs are. You know, as a dad, someone who knows football, like, you know, how important would you say that is for someone who's trying to pursue football at the highest level?
Yeah, I think it's huge. You know, there's no way a single strength coach can remember what, you know, the progress of 100 guys over the course of, especially during the in season, right? I mean, you got another, you know, you got a strength coach who's also a position coach. He's trying to figure out what his responsibilities from a playbook standpoint and you know, strategy and what he's going to call on the game during the week. And off season, like you just can't keep tabs on all these. I mean, you can have these kids with their own paper and you can look at it and go, but I think when you know, Kenan, for example, he would come in and, you know, maybe he's stuck on a certain exercise where, you know, you're just not seeing the progress that is happening as it is in other areas, or you know, maybe you just, the squat's not coming up, or the explosiveness isn't showing up like he thought it would at this point. Well, then he knows what he's been doing, and he can tweak that so that, you know, that does start showing up, or maybe you pull from one area and you kind of put it in that area. And I think that only happens when you work with somebody all the time and you're kind of with them and you spend the time. Again, to your point, nothing against NBA. They have the most gorgeous facilities weight room wise you're going to find. But when the resources are spread thin, and rightfully so, I mean, you want those guys to spend as much time with every kid on that team. There shouldn't be any kid that gets any more attention or than anybody else, but the numbers are the numbers. And I think, you know, this was, you know, we focused on, this was going to be his the majority of his off-season work. He was going to come in here, in addition to what they did as on the field and in the summer at NBA, but just kind of round out the corners of what, you know, he wasn't. That was the other thing I thought was really good, is like he would go in there and he'd have his team lifts, because of course he's going to be in there. And then the other part of it was Kenan knew what the workouts were that he was doing at school, and they kind of supplemented when he came in here. It's like, all right, let's just not just, all right, it's a leg day. Well, you just did legs. Let's kind of round it all off and get, you know, so everything he was doing had a purpose. And I felt like that can only be kind of crafted in a one-on-one situation.
So Luke, obviously you've been around football, been around coaching really your whole life. You've seen good coaches, you've seen bad coaches, I'm sure. You know, what made you trust Kenan? You know, the trust is a large part of this process. You clearly trusted Kenan. You know, what gave you the confidence to trust him?
You know, similar to what he said, you know, there's in my past school, MBA, you know, had everything you could need, but I mean, there was north of 100 people on the team, and you know, as you enjoyed it and you got to bond with your guys, and you know, you would push yourself, but you know, this is everyone's first time. No one's been anywhere above anyone else other than being a freshman or a senior, you know, that type of difference. So you might have high school experience, but when you step foot in here, you're surrounded by people that have been doing this for a long time and, you know, trained to train. You know, him and his resume and all that he knows and who he's been around and, you know, what he's done, it's kind of a no-brainer. You know, you're gonna get more out of it in here than you would anywhere else.
So Kenan, you know, Luke shows up like a lot of other kids. You know, he's kind of quiet, kind of standoffish. You know, you're trying to feel him out. You know, what did you first, you know, observe in Luke, both as an athlete and as a young man?
First thing, when he walked in the door, I just realized the frame that he had. Obviously knowing who his dad was, who Steve is. And, you know, I talked to Steve on the phone. He said, my kid's this big. He's got all the ability in the world. We're just trying to, you know, build on X, Y, Z. And then Luke walks through the door, and I was like, oh, he really does have that frame. You know, a lot of parents that you talk to, they'll say their kid's 6'4" and their kid's actually 6 foot. But Steve was not lying. He told the truth. Luke walked in the door, and all of a sudden we started moving and we started working. And I was like, this kid has some potential. And I could see it, the same things that Steve saw early on. Like, he could move, he had good hips, he had good feet, he had the frame to put on some weight, and he had power behind him. So it was just trying to focus on those things and enhance those things and make them what they are now.
So Kenan here at D1, like we get to train, kids of all walks of life, all different types of background. Someone like Luke comes in, like he's a known person, right? Like his last name, his dad's a Hall of Famer. His mom is probably more famous than all of them at this point. So like, what's that like as a coach, being able to separate that, right? Like, hey, Luke's still a young man. That's who we're pouring into.
I think at that point, especially at the age he was at when he first walked in, you put it back on the kid. He came in with a work ethic that he wanted to do this, and he worked really hard. Some kids come in and you have to like force it out of them some days. I never had to do that with him.
When he got up.
When he got up, yeah.
We're not gonna let
When
that
he
one
was
go.
actually physically in the gym, he worked hard. Like Steve said, I could always tell when he got a good workout because he'd sit on the floor for another 20 minutes after we were done, just trying to get his energy back up. But I think for him, it was a light bulb went off once he started to see the progress and results that he was making. I can particularly remember one day where he did a box jump and he looked at me and I was like, yeah, you just did that. Like, it was like a 48-inch box, and that was the first time he'd ever did it. And he was so excited about it. And I think that day kind of just clicked in him that, oh, I can continue to do these things. And then, I'd keep in touch with Steve and I'd show him progress of all the things that Luke was doing. Like, this is where he started. Look where your boy's at now. Like this is where the box he was at then. Like, I'd show you the lift before he was
5'10", 5.
the 5'10", 5. Like, this is where he's at. And Steve's sitting there telling me, like, if he goes to NFL Combine, this is where he'd be, and all those things. And I'm like, yeah, he's got the tools. So you just keep building on those.
Landon, in particular for you, what would you tell other moms or even just families that are in this, kind of the phase that Luke was in 2.5 years ago, where it's like, man, my son loves football. He has this dream, where we're not really sure. Like, he thinks he's a college football player. Like, he wants to pursue this. Like, but we don't really know what to do. What advice would you give to a mom or a family?
I mean, obviously, you're going to support your child through their hopes and dreams and get them in the right place. And I felt like D1 was that for us. But I will say, no one's going to do it for them. And I think they have to want it that bad.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to keep cheering them on. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to the NFL. I'm not going to play college football. So I can cook the meals and I can pick them up from practice and I can wash the socks and all the things. But it's him. It's all about him. So I think, be there for them and encourage them. But no one's going to do it but them.
So Luke, jumping back over to you here, just describe the moment you got the offer from Mississippi State. I don't remember the exact order that your offers came in. I know Mississippi State was kind of right there in the middle from what I recall. But like, what was in your mind? You'd gone there, I think, the year before, and it was close, but you weren't quite there just yet. They said that you're not ready, and then months down the road, they end up giving you an offer. What was that like?
Yeah, like you said, I went to camp. I went to Starkville. I competed in camp there, and I know I was like one of the camp MVPs. Like, I did a great job, and the coaches let me know that. But at that moment in time with their situation and yada yada yada, bottom of the line, I wasn't there yet, and and it was just another reason to come in here and put my head down and work as hard as I can, because who wouldn't want an SEC offer? That's everyone's dream. So, just came in here, kept working, would send videos of me lifting, Kenan would take me and everything I possibly could in my power to any coach, not necessarily just Mississippi State. And, until one day he came through and it was official.
So remembering back, like you said, in that June you went to camp, and kids especially don't really like to say this, to verbalize it out loud, but essentially at that point they told you, you're not good enough. Without, they didn't say it, right? But essentially that's what they're saying. It's just, right now, hey Luke, you're not good enough. We like you, but you're not good enough. And then fast forward in those 6 months later, suddenly like, hey, we want you. What did that exact moment feel like? I guess
it felt amazing, to know, I'm headed in the right direction and I'm doing the right things, because obviously if I wasn't, that would have not happened.
Yep.
Yeah, it was not so much a sense of relief, but a sense of a big achievement, in this large road I'm trying to go down.
I think the other thing too during this recruiting process for him, and another testament to him and how he just never really gave up on it, is being kind of late bloomer and being late into the recruiting world. You talk to these coaches, you go to these camps, you visit during these spring practices, and it's like, well, we've been recruiting these 3 guys for a year, now, you're kind of under them on the board, and then to find out, like, Mississippi State's like, you're at the top of the board, that was, I think, was a huge feeling to him. It's almost like, we don't have to wait and see what these other 3 guys do in order for me to make my decision. I'm not at the mercy of what these other guys do. I'm the one that's like, they're coming after me. So, you could tell that was a huge feather in his cap, and he should be proud for that.
So, Luke, what message do you have out there for other kids that are that 9th, 10th, maybe even the 11th grade year, where they feel like, hey, they still have this goal, they still have this dream, it's just not quite coming together? What would you tell, go back in time and even tell your 16-year-old self?
Just never lose hope or interest. That's the number one reason that it all falls out. If you just keep your head down, stay out of the noise, you'll have doubters nowhere, wherever you go, people online, people, just whatever it is, you can't listen to that, because it can be discouraging, especially when you're new to it and you're just trying to do it and you see someone trying to bring you down and you're like, oh, well, maybe this is it, but you just ignore it, put your head down, keep doing what you're doing. If you work hard enough, it'll come.
Luke, one of the things I loved about having you in here is you felt like, it seemed like you were at home really from right out of the gate almost. Obviously the training that you're in here, that's what you were here for. But it was really, really unique to see that you would hang out after workouts. You're talking to members, you're hanging out with the coaches, and you just felt really at peace and at home here. For you, like, what was that experience like?
Being in here a lot, you start to form relationships, not just with, Kenan, who's one-on-one with me every time, but I mean, even the people that you interact with, that are in the classes, or, whoever's behind the counter or the other rack. Just over time, building those relationships are special, because, it gives you almost like built-in buddies. Like, I'll finish a workout and I just want to catch up with everyone, because it's like, there's no reason to leave. I have all my friends here, and it's created that sort of bond, which has been nothing short of awesome. To have that as something special, because, it can be easy to just want to go home and crash and, play video games or just nap. But, I get more than equal amount of joy doing the same thing here.
And so, kind of along those same lines, this is really just a shameless plug for D1 that I'm asking you to give. So, Luke, what message would you give back to the D1 family of coaches and really just people that supported you from D1, that have kind of helped shape this journey? Like, what would you say to them?
The biggest thank you, possible. I mean, at least a lot of this stuff would not be possible, where I am now. I would not be the human I am today, not be the athlete I am today, not, I just wouldn't be who I am today, bottom line, without, Kenan, anyone who's trained me, the people that I interact with in here, the people I am to my parents. So it's changed me for the better. And I'm super thrilled that I chose to be here. Perfect. Continue to be here.
This is for Steve and Landon. When you look at Luke now, he's a committed SEC athlete. In my opinion, I'd say he's resilient. He's learned to fight through adversity. And I think he's ready at this point. I don't know that a year and a half ago, I don't think he was ready, but now I can honestly say, like, hey, when he goes off, like, I feel confident in saying, like, Luke's going to be ready no matter what the room looks like, what the locker room looks like. What would you guys say, that you're most proud of?
I'm proud overall of just the hard work and dedication he's put into the whole thing. And I don't think you learn anything in life from anything that comes easy. And I think there's been so many lessons in all of this and the fight. And he got the edge and he got angry enough and pissed off enough that he wasn't where he wanted to be, that he dug in. And now he's sitting right here, with an SEC offer. And I am just so proud. It's just been really, really fun to watch. Even Steve and Luke's relationship through all of this, I feel like has really grown. I think as a family, like it's put us through a lot together, and we're just excited to have a front row seat of his life, and we get to watch and cheer him on, and it's just been great. And really can't thank D1 enough for, embracing him and Kenan, the relationship. He's made every workout meaningful, and we are just super proud to be part of this family and everything he's going to do.
So, Kenan, as you know, one of the things that we really, pride ourselves on is like, yes, it is about the training. That's what we're being paid for. But it's also about forming a true relationship, with our athletes. Because, like what Steve said earlier, that's where when there's a real relationship level, there's trust and the results are going to come a whole lot faster. I think one of the really unique things about yourself is I didn't just stay inside of these walls. Like what are some of the things that you did to make sure that Luke knew like, he was valued, that he was seen?
I think, regardless of where I've been, whether it was here, college, NFL, I've always prided myself on relationships and being a relational person. And, it goes beyond training with Luke. I wanted to know what was going on in his life outside of here. So that way he knew, like, hey, if you're having a stressful time about something, this is a place where you can release that. I'm someone that you can talk to about that. I'm not around you all the time like mom and dad, so here's another soundboard for you. And so it's like, I want to know who he's going to prom with. We joke about that. I'm not gonna put you on blast right now. We're gonna leave that alone. But I want to know, like, what do you have going on this weekend? Where are you headed to? Those kind of things. And then, graduation. I've been with him almost the longest out of everybody. And so just to watch, like they said, just to watch him progress from where he was to now, it was just like one of those culminating moments. And it was just, I was proud to see him there. And I just felt like I wanted to show support for him, not just here in the gym, but in life as well. And let him know, like, hey, man, I'm proud of you. No matter where you go, I'm going to support you. I'm going to be there for you.
Steve, Landon, over the past 2.5 years, we've gotten to know you guys as a family, big supporters of y'all, both on the field and off the field. Kenan here has been great. We know, what was that like knowing that Kenan was willing to leave work early, to sacrifice his time to show up at your son's graduation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was fun. It was awesome. He's just as big a part of this last, like you said, 2.5-year window with Luke as we were. He's, of course he's living in our house, but he's here, after school, he's working with Kenan. He's trying to, accomplish a goal. So I felt like, for Kenan to want to take the time to show up at a landmark event like that, it was 100% warranted and welcomed. And, he didn't have to do that, but we wanted him, it was great for him to feel like he was such a part of Luke's life that he was there to celebrate that with us. And he got to meet the grandparents and all that. So back to the original point of this place is more of a family feel than it is you just kind of, pay for your sessions and hopefully you get something out of it and then you walk out the door. I mean, it's obviously, if you can't tell from what we've talked about the last however here, like it is a family feel. We did get the sense that Luke was, everybody here wanted the best for him. And, and you can tell he felt that because the amount of work and trust he put in you guys and the product that you see today as opposed to 2.5 years ago when he walked in the door.
No, when I turn around and saw Kenan at graduation, I mean, he feels like family to us. And I think, he's been on this journey with Luke, and Luke's coming here before school at, 6 a.m., getting a workout in. And I think it's important too, at this age for boys to let off steam and to move their bodies and work out. And I think it's just part of even his academic journey as well. I think the whole thing all the way around. And I think Kenan's seen him through the entire thing, the whole journey. And I think it was just almost it was definitely an accomplishment. And I felt like Kenan definitely wanted to be there for it. It was a big deal, and it was really sweet, and to put our arms around him and see grandma and grandpa and the whole thing. And I'll never forget Luke's face, the way it lit up when he turned around and saw him there, because he didn't have to be there, but he was there, and it was just really important to us, and we appreciated it, and it meant a lot to our whole family.